Hello and welcome back to UI Chat from the Interface, the podcast focused on the latest from Ubiquiti and anything network related. I'm Alex, and once again I'm joined by Evan McCann. Howdy.
Hey, good to be back. I like your choice of attire there. We just happen to be matching, which is, as always, great podcast content when we talk about some visual stuff.
Yeah, I can't act like we planned that. That was a happy accident, unfortunately.
Yeah. Anyway, I feel like, this month was a little bit quieter. I know back in March we had a ton of hardware, and we had talked about Alta Labs back then. This is thankfully a shorter list of hardware and software to go through.
Yeah, not too bad. We're recording this on Tuesday 29th, and I think I've lost track of the days, but I think yesterday Ubiquiti announced most of the stuff we're going to talk about in a minute, which there wasn't much hardware this month. But yeah, that's twice now, I think. It's happened where we've recorded a day before Ubiquiti, a day after Ubiquiti announced something, which is quite handy. So
yeah, helps to record at the end of the month.
Yep.
You just have to be careful about picking your days there.
Yeah, definitely. Cool. Before we get started on the Ubiquiti news for this month, thanks to everyone who has been supporting the show so far. We would really appreciate it if you could subscribe to the channel on YouTube or leave us a review in your podcast app of choice. It really, really does help. Thank you.
First, a quick bit of follow-up here. I think we had joked about it last month because when they were announced, they said it was coming in March 2025. And near the end of March, we were like, it's still not available. Is it actually coming this month or not? And actually, it turns out the U7 audience, this is the big access point that's kind of an updated base station XG, the like large stadium or arena size wireless network device. That got changed to coming soon. So it is not coming in March. And now that we're near the end of April, it doesn't seem like it's coming in April either. We didn't get a date, just it's coming soon. And same with the U7 Pro Outdoor. I think we had talked about that either last month or 2 months ago when they announced it. It's still in the coming soon state. And my read of this is that it has, it's probably related to them having a little bit more trouble getting approved for outdoor 6 gigahertz operation. That's just speculation. I haven't seen anything confirming that, but those are really complex devices, and those rules are very complex to operate outdoors in 6 gigahertz at full power. So it's probably, once they get that sorted, those two products will be available.
Yeah, and I did check all the relevant geographic stores for Ubiquiti, because sometimes they have different release dates for different countries, and they all say now coming soon. So I think you might be right on that front. So
yeah, we'll see.
We shall. Yesterday, Ubiquiti released a YouTube video which said that sort of loosely announced their Pro XG switches. We did actually talk about those last month, but what has changed is we now know more information about that new 8-port. It is 8-port XG switch. It's now on the store and it is coming soon, I think. All of those Pro XG switches are now available to order, and there are some other bits and pieces on there as well. I think there's an extra little skit that they published as well, I think today, with that actor.
Yeah, they had
his name.
their long series of like kind of funny ads with the two famous actors that we both can't remember the names of, but you'll recognize them when you see them.
Yep.
But they've had a bunch of those ads over time, and this one was about how fast and amazing their 10 gig switches and APs are. So all the XG products that we talked about last month.
So that's all quite cool. And then there's also a new 10 gig Ethernet adapter, which is a fairly good price, I think. I'm not overly sure how much these things should cost, but it's a tiny silver puck thing or rectangle thing. Looks like a PoE injector, maybe. It's got USB-C on one side and a RJ45 on the other side. Works with Mac and PC, and it's $200, and it makes your device 10 gig compatible. So there's that.
Yeah, I have something similar. I know I have one that's 5 gigs,
Okay.
And I think I might even have a 2.5 gig one. But yeah, the 10 gig ones can be a little bit pricey. I don't think $200 is outrageous, but yeah, you could probably find a slightly cheaper, knockoff, no name brand. You just need the bare minimum, but they're nice, and yeah, you're paying a little bit more for the nice silver box that it is.
I think if you buy a Mac Mini or something like that, I think you pay $100 extra for 10 gig support. I think when you can,
right.
So it's, I guess it kind of makes sense. I'm not too sure, but yeah.
Yeah, it's just if you have a computer that doesn't have a 10 gig port and you need 10 gig connection, there you go, $200.
There was also the Professional Integrators program. That's now out of EA. It's been in EA a little while. And there's some new training classes that have been announced at the same time. And these are, I think, they're very similar to the old Air Max classes they used to do, but just for UniFi, I think. Is that right?
Yeah, so this is the program, I think it was late last year when they announced it in EA, and this is more designed for, they call it professional integrators, but we can think of it as like an MSP or someone who's installing UniFi equipment. So this is their program. They do training, you get priority phone support, and you get email access to a Ubiquiti ambassador. So it's just, it's a program for people that install a lot of hardware and kind of need that support. It's another option there. And the training is, I think, kind of new part of that program. So it looks like they're kind of doing one a month focused on, Wi-Fi 7. They have one about the AI features of their access products like Protect and Access. And then in July, they're doing scalability of network routing and switching. So I'm sure they'll announce those, and maybe they'll just do kind of one a month for a while. But that program, you need to spend, I think it's $9.99 a year to apply and get into it.
Yeah. Yeah, it's just looking at it, it's a little bit different to the MX classes I was mentioning, but it seems quite geared towards people who professionally install stuff. And I think this is a really good idea because no matter how much you spend with Ubiquiti, you get treated the same. Like it depends on how, like, if you're a big business installing a lot of stuff all the time, you need a bit more hands-on support really, and you'll get the same with any industry, whether it be automotive or you might get stuff with Cisco, I'd imagine, if you purchase a lot of their stuff. So it's about time that Ubiquiti started doing a little bit more in terms of bigger customers of theirs. So that's good to see.
But yeah, no longer an early access program. Now it's general access, I guess.
Yeah, cool.
And then finally getting on to hardware, this was another thing. I think the news of this dropped yesterday with a YouTube video and an announcement post. But the first hardware to talk about is the WAN switches. So right now there's two different models. There's either a fiber module with 10 gig SFP plus or a just Ethernet model with 10 gig RJ45. The idea for either of those models is you take, one connection from your ISP in, and then it spits out two connections for like an HA setup, like shadow mode, if you have two redundant gateways. So this solves a problem that a lot of people had when they were looking at shadow mode. And, if you wanted to buy two Dream Machine Pros or whatever model, a lot of times your internet provider only gives you one, physical cable or one physical fiber to plug into. So you can solve that in other ways. You could, route it through your internal network and, create a VLAN to do that, or put in another piece of equipment or do that. But this is just a clean way to do that where, one ISP link in and then your shadow mode gateways are behind it. The only other thing is it does have redundant power, and in their video they did kind of say this kind of completes the story. So now that we have all the gateway options, the software's there. This kind of completes the, how do you get the internet into those redundant gateways, and then, keep everything supported. So, and they're only $249, so they're actually pretty cheap. But I did have to laugh a little bit. It'd be nice if this had, rather than 3 ports, it had 6, because a lot of times you'll have 2 ISPs with 2 individual cables. So their solution for that, if you have like a primary WAN and a secondary WAN, and both of those, you kind of need to split with these kind of switch, you'd have to buy 2 UniFi WAN switches. So one per ISP, but at least they're fairly cheap and they look pretty nice.
I'd love to know what they're doing behind the scenes. So, and there are some theoretical limitations that this has as well. So, as you mentioned, you could achieve this kind of thing with your own switch and do some VLAN stuff.
Yes, I would not recommend that.
Right.
Because especially once like people would be tempted to run it down to their switch that's on their internal network, and then either like create a VLAN just for this kind of thing. I've been involved with supporting a network like that, and when things go down, there's many issues. So yes, like that is a technical way you could solve this problem, but this is the proper way. You'd want something in front of your gateways that is separate for doing that.
Yeah. And also it's interesting. So with the UniFi Fiber, what's it called? The UCI, the cable
internet, where it's
That's
like a
the one.
modem.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that was a interesting. I reckon this is doing the same thing. It was plugging itself into the WAN port of the Dream Machine, and then you have the question of how does that actually get an IP address? But I think in that solution, I think they were tagging a VLAN up the WAN port of the UDM, and then untagging it on the cable internet device to get itself an IP address on the LAN side of the Dream Machine. I reckon this is probably doing the same thing potentially.
This does have a separate 1 gig. On the back of the device, there's the dual power supply input, and then there's also a 1 gig RJ45 management port. So it's possible. I mean, maybe if you don't connect, that would be, the normal thing. You'd plug that into the LAN side of your network, and that's how you manage this device, and that's how UniFi can reach it and push config changes to it, etc. I'd be surprised if they're doing that little creative VLAN tagging automatically thing, but it's totally possible, especially if you don't use that management port. I would wonder how you'd manage it. It would have to be something like that. Yeah.
The other one is the other limitation it possibly has is if you've got a ISP that isn't DHCP, so it's either PPPoE or static IP address. I would love to know how it's doing that. Is it I don't know. It can't keep it potentially with Dream Machine 1 and Dream Machine 2. If it knows it has PPPoE, it probably saves the details in Dream Machine 2, and as soon as Dream Machine 1 goes off, it knows, oh, okay, I can dial out now. That might be how it works, because just coming from an ISP world, I know that you can limit a certain PPPoE account to only have one session and all that sort of stuff. So I would if you're in that kind of situation where you have a provider that does PPPoE or worst case scenario, they're doing some sort of MAC address filtering. Yeah. Anything there's so many different ISPs with so many different restrictions and types of connections. If it's just you're getting an IP and that's pretty straightforward. If you're in a PPPoE setup, that might read the fine print for those kind of things. Yeah. Yeah, I don't know why they didn't, as you mentioned, I don't know why they couldn't have put this in one switch for two ISPs. It would have made sense. Surely it's just doing, I don't know how, it's probably doing some sort of VLAN stuff to make the ports bridge together. They could have done that. Yeah, I mean, this is essentially just a 3-port switch. It's yes. ISP and then your two gateways, and they're all kind of connected there. But yes, putting that aside, it's a nice piece of hardware. Yes. If you're building out a full rack and you want to do shadow mode, this is definitely something to add to your shopping cart. Yeah, definitely. And one last thing, I'd never heard of a WAN switch before yesterday. Is this a very common type of piece of hardware, is it? Or is it... You need to solve this problem in some way. Okay. It could be your ISP gives you two handoffs from whatever their piece of equipment is. That would probably be the most common. At least the most common that I've dealt with is your ISP gives you two physical connections. If your ISP can only give you one, you have to solve that problem. You can solve it with a piece of hardware like this, or you can solve it by running it into your core switch and back out. Whatever you have to do. Yep. I wouldn't say WAN switch is like a super common thing, but you need to solve this problem in some way. Sure. The next device, we did touch on this last month because it was in a blog post that Ubiquiti had, but this is the Pro XG8 PoE. And yeah, it seems a good little device. I think every port is PoE. So every... Hang on. There's 8 10 gig RJ45 ports. All 8 of them are PoE++. Yeah. And that's the 60 watt. And you've mentioned in the show notes that this has got a very similar body to the UISP Switch Plus as well, which, even down to the power supply connector is a bit of a weird one for UniFi. Yeah, the dimensions are slightly different, but it has that same look, and it's almost the exact same size as the UISP Switch Plus, which probably a lot of people aren't aware of that switch, but if you look in the UISP side of the store, it's pretty dead on for what this is. And the other interesting one to compare to is the Enterprise 8 PoE, because it's only $20 less, but it lacks the 10 gig interfaces and it lacks PoE++. So
a lot of trade-offs once you get into the $500-ish desktop switch. If you want 10 gig interfaces, you obviously want to look at this XG model.
Of course, yeah. 155 watt PoE budget. As you said, all ports are PoE++. As you said as well, no screen. So bit of a weird one for UniFi switches now that they tend to all have screens now, apart from the lower end ones. And yeah, much like the UISP switch, it's actually the USB switch device has got an external power supply, which with a barrel connector, which is really bizarre for a UniFi switch. But
yeah, I don't love the barrel connector. I mean, a lot of these, like once you look on the store in the utility category, where a lot of those desktop models are, a lot of times, yeah, it's either be powered by PoE or be powered by a little barrel connector. This is one of the barrel connector ones.
Yeah, so that could get knocked out potentially. But yeah, if you want something that's going to stay in, that Enterprise 8 PoE has got a locking IEC connector, I think they're called. So
yeah, and that's what I think I learned on the fly as we were recording last time. I was talking about the 3 XG models, but then you're like, no, there's a 4th or a 5th. I think there's 5 total, right? So there's the aggregation, the 48 and the 24 PoE, the 10 and the
10
8.
port.
Yeah,
that's right. Yeah,
yeah. So all 5 of them are announced out. Go compare their specs and all that until they announce one more. I'm sure it's coming.
Yeah, and I think friend of the show, Chris Sherwood, has reviewed some of their switches the other day. So if you're on YouTube at any point, go and check those videos out. They should be quite good. Now, for this section of the show, me and Evan interviewed a guy called Adam Mills, and he runs his own WISP in West Virginia. I think I learned on the fly that there's a difference between Virginia and West Virginia.
There's 2 of them.
Yeah. So Adam, as I said, runs his own WISP. He's only just got started, so he approached us a little while ago to say, can I come on the show and talk about my WISP? So he's doing some interesting stuff. So we're now going to cut to that interview, and we'll come back in a minute.
So my name is Adam Mills. I work with Network in West Virginia, and we are a new WISP that is actually in West Virginia, and our plan is to basically provide wireless internet, a fixed wireless internet service using all Ubiquiti equipment to the rural and underserved areas of West Virginia. It's a challenge here, of course, because there's not a whole lot of networking throughout West Virginia, and then wireless is difficult with the mountains and haulers and stuff that we have here. But this company kind of started more as a mistake than on purpose. We do a lot of Ubiquiti stuff, and that includes small business, residential, even some enterprise stuff. And my background is a lot in some in telecommunications. And then we were doing a lot of Ubiquiti stuff with the small business and residential stuff. And then it seemed like, 80% of the calls that we got were, can I get internet service? Well, we didn't have anything to do with internet service. We had to do with getting Wi-Fi into your house once you had internet service. And so eventually at some point we're like, we need to figure out how we can get people internet service, because that's what they're trying to buy from us. And so that's kind of how this came about, was we transitioned into this. And it's actually, at the time of this recording, I just got the message this morning from the installers. They're getting ready to put up our first set of equipment on our first tower in West Virginia. And so this is the start of 5 towers that we plan on doing this year, and then we'll see where it goes next year. But the intention is to get internet service everywhere in West Virginia that either doesn't have it or is underrepresented right now.
Awesome. So, it sounds like you were using UniFi a lot earlier, and I guess were you like an MSP deploying UniFi equipment then?
Yeah, and really what, I don't know how far back we want to go, but kind of the real introduction into UniFi for me was probably, like, really getting in deep was probably around the 2017 area, which was a good time for UniFi.
Yeah.
And this came in the data centers when I run data centers for privately owned data centers, and where this became an issue was we were always using UniFi as our access points, and then of course we just had a controller that ran those, and then we had our camera systems were a different company, and then we had door access systems, and those are with another company, and then it seemed like every single component we had was a different company. So as the person that was running these centers, then it was up to me to learn all of these pieces of equipment. And if something worked really well, you didn't have to work on it, which was great because you never had to touch it. It's just the door access system just worked. And so it worked for 3, 4, 5 months. And then one day that system doesn't work for some reason, and now you've got somebody at the door that's letting people in, but now I haven't touched that piece of equipment in 5 or 6 months. So it's almost like I have to relearn it in order to repair it because I don't work with it every day. And so we started transitioning stuff into Ubiquiti to kind of put all of this together, not only so that I only had to learn the one product, but to simplify the process and make it easier to repair when there was problems. And so that was kind of the transition, was getting the data centers, that part of the data centers moved over so that we can manage the facilities better and manage our reporting better. And then I kept going from there. And that's kind of how that came about anyway. Was more of a need of just not wanting to learn every bloody thing that was there,
Well, hey, if you don't look at the UniFi web interface for 6 months, it probably looks different too. So.
That is very true.
But you mentioned you just built your first tower, or you're about to start hanging your first radio. So what is the WISP network that you're building look like? Or what's the plan for all those towers that you have?
So this first deployment, we're using all the LTU equipment. We're using all 5 gigahertz LTU equipment. We're out pretty rural. We originally bought a whole bunch of 60 gigahertz equipment, but of course if you have anything other than absolute line of sight with the 60 gigahertz equipment, you're not getting anything out of it. So our target audience is very rural, and so the 60 gigahertz equipment didn't make sense. So we ended up getting a bunch of 5 gigahertz equipment, and then we did a lot of testing with that. And so this deployment, as it's being set up, we're setting up I think 4 of the LTU radios on there, and we're putting 2 gigs, a dedicated line, 2 up and 2 down inside of that tower. So we're getting a fiber feed directly into that tower, and then we're deploying out of there, which of course that brings up a whole bunch of other things that we can talk about with UniFi and their setup. But that's the setup, is that we're putting in 4 LTE radios, the rockets, and then we're putting in at least 1 point-to-point that's going off of that to feed another station to get more out of there. And then we've worked with the public utility service, and we're trying to get them service onto their water towers and pump stations and things, so that not only can we feed customers, but then we can kind of feed a need in the community. They're having a lot of issues with the reporting of those places. So if they have a pump or something that's having a problem, it takes somebody to drive by and look at a light that's on or not. Somebody has to physically go by. And so in 2025, this is kind of a thing that shouldn't really exist, but again, with no services, there's just no real way for them to monitor that stuff remotely very well. And so we're working with them on getting our equipment onto their water towers and pump stations, and we'll give them service for that, and we'll help them with the monitoring of their facilities for that. And then in turn, it gives us a point of presence where we can rebroadcast to some people that we might not be able to otherwise, because they're down in the gullies where the tower can't hit them, or around a corner, something like that. And so it's just, the idea on this deployment is that we'll just kind of branch out from there and see where it goes. And then our second deployment's a big one, because 2 of the towers, the 3rd and 4th tower we're going on to, don't have internet service. And so we have to take internet service from our second deployment and send that out to 2 other towers, and then we'll end up feeding them that way. And then our 5th tower, by the time we do the 5th tower, we'll have that redundant ring running across all of them, so that we've got we'll have 3 fiber feed. We'll have 3 towers that have fiber feeds into them, and then we'll have everything connected wirelessly from tower to tower to give us that redundancy.
Forgive me for not understanding how everything works in your part of the world, but just paint a picture of how bad or how desperate some of the people have been to get better internet, because I don't know what the infrastructure is like.
That's a good question. So what we have is we actually have, and it amazes me, but and I'm sure there's other places, but we have a lot of DSL users that are here that are still running on a DSL, and even cable. But those services are so oversold that, when all the kids get home from school and start watching cat videos on YouTube, all of a sudden you get the spinning wheel of
Yeah.
refreshing and caching your system. So even though they're being told that they're paying for a 300 meg
Hmm.
download speed, they're trying to watch something on the TV or something, stream something, and they're getting that spinning wheel. And it's just a service that's been just so oversold. And
Yeah.
then there's quite a few people that are on DSL, that are still on DSL. And then the areas that were one of the targets that we're trying to really hit from that second deployment we're doing is going into an area where those people have the only option that they have is a HughesNet or a Viasat, high altitude satellite. And then in some cases, some of them are using Starlink. And the problem is that even those services are starting to get really oversaturated. When we first hooked up our Starlink, we were getting 250 or so megs, and we're really lucky if we hit 100 now. And they're just oversaturated with people as they switch to it. They're getting saturated. And then HughesNet, we try to talk to the customers that are in the area where we're putting deployments first to find out what service they have, how much they're paying for it, what speeds they're getting. And more often than not, they'll actually let us go to their house and do speed tests on their system. And what we're finding is a lot of people that are using like the HughesNet and the Viasat, the high altitude satellites, they're actually getting right around 10 megs down, and then they're getting between 2 and 5 up, and they're
Yeah.
paying 100 to 120, $140 a month for that connection. So they're paying a massive amount of money. They're not getting a connection that's worth anything. And those are the places that we're trying to target first, because we can give them a product at a lot lower price to the
Yep.
customer, and we can give them a lot better service for that lower price. And so those are kind of the areas. A lot of people, it seems, with the WISP, they're trying to target that high customer volume. Get your WISP over the city where you have all these customers to choose from. But the problem is that you also have a lot of competition, and then there's not always necessarily a need for another service there, or the customers that need your service, it's because they can't get another service for
Mm.
one reason or other, sometimes because they didn't pay a bill at that service or something like that. So our focus has been on the really rural areas, the people that don't really have a whole lot of options.
Yeah. So far, the people you've connected, what's the reception been? Have they been like? Because usually, in my experience, when people have had really really bad internet connections, it's like their whole world has got better. So
Right.
what's the
And
feedback
so
been
far
like?
we've only hooked in a few in the test model, and after this tower goes up, then we're hooking in a bunch more people into that test model, and we'll give them free service for a while we run through and kind of try to perfect the system.
Hmm.
But the response has been very good, not only because the service is so much better, and then the people that are the real people you want to target is the ones that are on the high altitude satellites, because they're looking at like 300 to 600 millisecond ping times. And so when all of a sudden you're giving them a network, and you're giving them, we limit it to 150 down. So you're giving them 150 down, and you're giving them, a 23 millisecond ping time from what they
Hmm.
went through. It's life changing in that respect. It's life changing.
You said 150 meg down service, and you're running LTU rockets on 5 gigahertz. There's like 800 things I want to follow up on, but the main thing is looking back at the tower. You mentioned 4 LTU rockets. Like, what kind of antennas do you have on them? How are you powering them, and how are you planning on spectrum management, capacity planning, oversubscription ratios? Like, how do you think about all of those topics?
As far as most of the future goes, because we're so new to this, what we've really done is we've set up that tower. We're pulling 2 gigs into that tower, and when we pulled fiber into that tower for us, they actually pulled in I believe 6, and I think they're willing to give me 5 gigs at that tower. If I want more than that, then we have to they have to talk to engineers and go through all the all the fun stuff to do that. But I'm using the 120, the 120 degree.
Oh, the sector antennas.
The sector antennas, yeah.
So yeah, that's a pretty widespread. I mean, that's the benefit of being in such a rural area. I'd assume you got pretty clean spectrum around you. I know for probably Alex's experience and for mine, the towers we were on, the rooftops and water towers, and we were on a couple like cell tower installations, and everywhere we went, DFS was a mess, and the high and low channels, especially the high where you can broadcast at that higher power,
Right.
always a lot of noise. So hopefully your noise is lower. And those wide antennas work out for you.
Yeah, the only thing that we have on those towers is 2 cell carriers. And as you travel basically throughout the rural West Virginia, that's what you find is you'll find the cell carriers, and then nobody else is on the tower. There's nothing else there. And then periodically you'll find some radio equipment once in a while for like the 911 service and things like that, which is completely out of spectrum from, they're not a concern. But that's all you'll find is just cellular is the only thing that you'll see on them. And I think this particular tower, this first one that we're going on, it's got AT&T is in there, and I believe T-Mobile is in there.
Well, yeah. Flipping to the other side of the equation, we have a note about CPE. So what are you using for your the LTU receiving radio side, and then are you handing them like an air cube, or like are you just handing them an Ethernet connection off that CPE radio, or what's your plan for those?
So, yeah, the
to be determined.
Have you ever used the air cube?
Yes.
Yeah.
And I don't know what you think about it. It was probably
there's
okay
2 different models. I will say the AirCube ISP.
Yeah.
It was like $30.
Yeah.
802.11n Wi-Fi 4
Yep.
old. Do not recommend that one. The AirCube AC. I think at least when I was aware of them, they were like $80, and they're Wi-Fi 5.
Yeah.
Those are at least reliable enough.
And
they both kind of get the job done, but yeah, they're not great.
Yeah, and I've got some of the. I've actually got some of both. And again, we bought them for testing and trying them out. And the AirCube AC is it's definitely like we won't even touch the other one. We bought a couple. I think I only opened up one of them. Was like, yeah, that's not going to work. And so the AC's all right. It is a nightmare trying to get that thing connected into the system correctly. We've had the hardest time getting that thing to connect. Once you get it, it's great and it's fine, and it does good reporting, so you can tell if it's online or offline. Like, it's great when it's working. It's great, but getting it working, you can spend a lot of time sitting there trying to figure out why this thing is not working correctly, or why it's not adopting. That's the problem, is getting it to adopt to the UISP is that's where the issue's at. If you can get it to go, then that sucker's good to go, but you're going to spend some time. You better set aside 2-hour block appointments.
When it's working, it's great. Could be UISP's motto.
Don't tell me that. I don't want to hear that.
What types of like receivers are you using? So you've got the LTE Lite, the Pro, the long range, and also the extreme range. Are you using a whole combination of various ones, or just one type?
I'm trying to use the extreme range is the one that I'm really narrowed down on. We have quite a few of them, and we actually have stacks and stacks of them here that are getting ready to go out. But that's the one that we're kind of targeting, and I'm really trying to get a good price point on buying pallets of those. That's still kind of an ongoing discussion with the distributors and with Ubiquiti. It's when it doesn't seem to matter if you buy 2 of something or 2,000 of something, your price changes by about $2 per piece. So there's not a whole lot of price break there, and we were really hoping. So now it's more trying to focus in on how can I get the shipping less expensive. If I'm ordering that much, how can I get the shipping less expensive? Because that's kind of I think the last quote I got was well over $700 to ship a pallet of those radios. And so it's trying to get that shipping cost down as part of it too. But yeah, the extreme range is the one that we've targeted. That's what we're planning on putting up everywhere we can.
Okay.
Yeah, it's a bit big, but the extra gain is really nice. I would say, I don't know if you've tested it, but I would recommend probably steering clear of the light. It's a nice price point. It's a nice little convenient radio, super small.
I can't even get it.
It's just, the gain, and it's just too wide of an antenna with too low of a gain. If you're more than like a mile from your tower, you're going to have a bad time.
Yeah, and luckily with this first tower that's going up, most of the people that are around that tower are very close to the tower. But we couldn't get the light. I don't think it's been in stock, and I want to say I started watching it like in October or something, and I still haven't seen it come into stock. I would have liked to have tested those. We've tested the long range and the extreme range, and your point exactly was that the extra gain you get out of the extreme range versus the size of it. These people are already using HughesNet and stuff. Like at this point,
they have a 3-foot wide satellite dish on their front lawn.
At this point, if I installed a 70-foot tower in their front lawn and put this thing on the tower, they'd be okay with that. So I have a little bit of lenience as far as that goes. So we only have a few of the long ranges. We've bought mostly just the extreme range.
I forget. I was going to say, it sounds like top to bottom, from, your in and off, your internet is handed off at the base of the tower. You have UISP power, UISP router, UISP switch, powering UISP radios, powering UISP CP radios. Is there anything that you feel like it's a benefit to consider going outside of the Ubiquiti ecosystem? Because they've clearly designed this to like all work together, right, and then everything's monitored in one piece of software. But inevitably, there's going to be, maybe it's the router at your base of your tower. You want to use a different brand or something. Is there anything that you've considered not using Ubiquiti for?
Well, of course, but I'm really trying to stick with the Ubiquiti for a couple of reasons. One, if things aren't working right and I can't figure out why they're not working right, I want one person that I can call and say, hey, you need to solve this problem. This is your equipment. You need to solve this problem. Whereas we've kind of played that game before, mainly in the data center scenario where you've got, like in our case, you got MikroTik switches, and then you've got some HPs that are got your fiber going out to your racks and down the server, and then you've got some HP or TP-Link switches out there running through them. And it's really, if there's an issue, it gets a little bit more complicated to follow that issue to find out where it's at or what's causing it. And so having just one piece of equipment, when you look in the UISP interface there, when you can actually see everything from your connection all the way back. So if you're having an issue, you can see where that's at pretty clearly. Whether or not you know what's causing it is a different story, but at least right away you narrow down that issue. And so the reason we've really trying to do just 100% Ubiquiti is, in part, I want somebody to blame. I want to be able to call somebody and say, hey, this is your equipment. This is your problem. This is what you told. I need you to figure this out.
You can call Ubiquiti, but they're not going to answer unless you pay them. So.
Well, and I'm okay with that too, as long as I've got somebody I can yell at,
One thing I would say is the benefit of having everything in UISP is that any weird dropouts, in my experience, that's the most time-sensitive application out of all the ones I've used. So where I used to work, we used to have different systems like SolarWinds that would ping all the different bits on the network at quite a slow interval, and UISP would pick up an outage that these other systems wouldn't. I'd see it, and the benefit of having that on the AirCube is that you've got the last bit of connectivity at the customer's premise that's monitored. And if they say it's dropped out, and then it has, then in the past I'd see people not be too fussed about those issues if they didn't show on the main software, if you know what I mean.
Right. And being able to power cycle that equipment and stuff, from our end, being able to kind of troubleshoot that and power cycle that equipment if you need to. And
if someone says, oh, the Wi-Fi's not working very well, you can see what RSSI they've got on their phone.
Yeah. Right.
Turns out they're neg 85 or...
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
And there's a solution for that too.
Yep.
UniFi makes lots of solutions for that.
Yeah.
Usually it involves spending more money.
Mm-hmm.
And I was going to say, as much as we're singing the praises of UISP, I will say it definitely has the less favored child syndrome, where UniFi is the one Ubiquiti clearly has more interest in supporting.
Right.
So documentation for UISP, product updates, product availability, like the LTU Lite, just all those things. It just seems like Ubiquiti cares a little bit less than they should about UISP.
Yeah, and I agree, and I think that could be a bad flavor that could end up being contagious, because what I get when I'm talking to the distributors, one of the very first questions that I get is, have you thought, like, why are you using Ubiquiti? How come you're not using, and of course I'm always like, well, why are you at, and they usually go to, well, availability. But I think there's a little bit more in there than what they're saying. Of course they're not going to, steer me off, but I feel like most of the time the distributors are like, well, we can maybe push you a little bit.
We get a
in
higher
this
commission
direction.
on Cambium, so do you want to look at
right. And that may be, it's hard to tell, because like I said, the excuse that I usually get is the availability of the UISP product. If you end up in the future needing a third person to bitch about UniFi, I've got lots to talk about in there too. So you let me know.
Yeah, we'll do.
We need to start a new podcast called like Ubiquiti Support Group, where
Right.
we just complain about things. Yeah,
Right. It's where we can support each other,
right.
where we can all sit and help heal our wounds, our Ubiquiti wounds.
Yeah, that interview was really good. I found sort of Adam's enthusiasm for his business really interesting. It sort of took me back to my first days when I used to work at UISP. I don't know about you.
Yeah, for sure. And that I think the thing I related to most was like him saying like sometimes it's hard to find people to talk to, or like it's hard to find answers to the questions you run into with running a WISP. Because I dealt with that a lot, where I was looking at a forum post from 7 years ago trying to figure out if that was still true, and it's hard to find information, and it's good to find other people that are doing this and kind of compare notes. So it's good to talk to him.
Yeah, definitely.
But yeah, getting back to April's news here, the big software announcement. I know this was one of those that's big enough that they made a YouTube video to announce. So like, you can always tell it's a big release when there's a YouTube video to go along with it.
Yeah.
But this is UniFi Network 9.1. There have been a couple different builds, but currently 9.1.120 just went general access, I think today or yesterday, very recently. But there was an earlier build. So. But yeah, minor bug fixes aside, the big features of 9.1 are traffic flows. So this is like kind of real time, my laptop is communicating with google.com was kind of an example you saw there. I think of, normal enterprise firewall feature is you kind of see these traffic flows and be able to monitor them and just see that kind of real time information there in UniFi, which is nice. They also added a traffic overview, enhanced QoS rules. This is something I think we had touched on before, but they now support up to 8 WANs. To me, dual WAN is, that has a very common use case. Adding a third, you're probably in a specialized situation. If you have 8 WANs, I don't know what you're doing or why you need 8. But that's really nice that support is there, where you can go beyond 2 if you need to, all the way up to 8. They improved the port manager. There's a new VPN client wizard, and they did finally add the support for the hotspot portal certificates. So this is the if you have a guest Wi-Fi page where you have a splash page and you want to have that be secured with certificate and have it be hosted on a custom domain, that feature is now finally added. A few of these do require UniFi OS 4.2, but those are the big heavy hitters.
Yeah, I was going to mention traffic flows requires UniFi OS 4.2.8, and interestingly, they mentioned on, if I can find it, it said to do with storage retention. So it said like the UDM Pro Max, UDM SE, those devices have that SSD built in, whereas there's an asterisk next to some of them like the UCG Max and the UDM Pro. It says for better retention, please put a hard drive in, basically. So.
To store data, have something to store data onto. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, that I'd be curious about how much data that uses and how much storage they kind of recommend to go a month back in time, because I mean that can be useful real time, but more so you want to be able to see over the past week or month, those kind of details. So
that's true.
I don't know if they spelled that out, but yeah, if you don't have a gateway that has storage, it might be time to upgrade.
Yeah, definitely.
They did also. I thought this was a weird one. They added shadow mode for the UXG Enterprise. I forgot that wasn't a thing. But that kind of continues the long pattern of the UXG models being a little bit slower to get features. So now if you have a pair of UXG Enterprises, you can do shadow mode. They also added MDNS proxy, AP overview and AirView, a way to view all of your SFP connections. So they have an SFP analyzer and a client analyzer.
I saw that. That's really good.
There's a lot of really nice stuff kind of over the broad category of like looking at your network traffic, viewing details about your network. They've been building those kind of features a lot, and these are just kind of the latest batch of them.
I noticed one of the features with the old GUI that Ubiquiti had was that you had like a graph of, you could go for per client and see when they use, like a graph basically of see when they use traffic. That's now essentially come back.
That's kind of what client analyzer is, right?
Yeah, and it seems like it's taken them a little while, but there are certain niceties from the old GUI that they've started to rebuild, and it's great. And it also, what I noticed is in that client analyzer, it tells you on a little timeline of when they roamed, because that information is really hard to find.
Yeah.
So yeah,
and that's like you mentioned in the old, the legacy interface or old interface or whatever. It was just on the side panel, you just kind of had like over the course of 24 hours, you had just like up, down graph. This is a lot more nuanced and it has a lot more detail. So it's really nice.
Yeah. Really, really good update there. And they're slowly making some improvements. There is also one more thing with I think it was released today, the UniFi app for iPhone. There's they've redesigned it a little bit. There's also a section there for real-time data usage. And it actually is real-time. Real-time.
Yeah, I noticed that.
Yeah.
So I mean, there's a lot of the list of improvements, like always, goes on and on. I noticed a lot that were kind of like quality of life, and I'm glad you called that out, because I noticed that the other day when we had a brief interruption in our internet. We were watching some TV and it just stopped, and I was like, huh. So I just opened the app, and that was the first time I noticed it. It is like spookily real time. And I noticed, at least the iOS app. It seems like it has kind of a fresh coat of paint, so there's some new features and some improvements there.
Yeah. There's also some updates to UniFi Drive and the UniFi OS version for UNAS. So we got UniFi Drive 2.0.1 and UNAS 4.2.8, and they both add, UniFi Drive adds OneDrive and Dropbox backup locations for backing up your UNAS, which is quite cool because it was just Google Drive previously. And the UniFi OS update for the UNAS adds RAID 6 support. And there's a bunch of little bits and pieces not worth mentioning, but that's the two heavy hitters in those updates. So that's quite good.
RAID 6, the nerds rejoice.
Yeah. I'm UniFi Drive is not one of those things I just use all the time, like UniFi Protect or something. It's very much a silent little thing in the corner. But it's so good. I think I mentioned on the show a few times, but I edit off my UNAS and it just sits there and stores all my video files. And one thing I have used is the copy link. You can share something with someone and not have to upload it and then download it again. It's all quite seamless. So it's really, really good product, and I think a little bit underrated at the moment. So
yeah, very cool.
Yeah.
And then also, this is probably the last big one, was Protect 5.3. This was we made a YouTube video for it, level release. We had kind of joked about the hallway mode, which we don't fully understand how that's different than just rotating the camera. But now it does have hallway mode, and they called out it only is supported on specific cameras, so maybe hallway mode does more things than rotating the view, but that kind of seems to be the main point of hallway mode. And then the other big stuff is it adds API support, which I believe we had talked about before. video-only recording mode, so you can record the video and not record the audio, but you'll still have audio during a live view. So that's probably like a compliance thing for a lot of places where you can't record public places, you can't record audio in certain areas. That's a nice feature. And probably the big one is, or last big one is the they did a lot of stuff about alarms and triggers and tying into third-party webhooks. So you can have multiple conditions to trigger alarms, and you can use external webhooks. So the examples they gave of that, where if you have a camera pointed at like a cash register, and that cash register says this transaction was suspicious, you can have that tie into UniFi Protect and automatically flag that video for review, saying this is the video of that time when that transaction happened. So there's a lot of possibilities with tying into other systems or sending a Slack message when something happens. All very cool stuff to play around with. But yeah, that's 5.3. There's a couple bug fixes. I think currently it's 5.3.45 is GA.
Yeah, there's been some improvements to stability for AI port as well. I reviewed the AI port recently, which I'll get into in a minute, but at the end of the show, sorry. Its stability in terms of how many cameras it can manage versus how many it is actually capable of doing. They've improved the stability on that, because it used to be for a little period of time that it could only manage one essentially before it crashed and rebooted. So
yeah,
they've improved that over the last few weeks, which is really good. That's pretty much it for the big software bits and pieces. There's a few little, like, tiny little bits that we've got. So UISP router and console 5.3.2. It adds SSH key support, and DHCP version 6 PD can now also be configured. There's a few other bits and pieces that didn't really make much difference, but that's pretty good. Yeah, that's good. And then also UMR, so the UniFi mobile routers, IPsec VPNs are now supported. And in that release notes, there was something about UniFi Protect adoption. There was, I haven't tested this, but apparently if you've got a VPN tunnel between your UMR and your network where the UniFi Protect system is, it will help you adopt the camera quite easily over that VPN somehow. So that should be something I should probably test at some point, but that's quite cool. So
yeah, that's really cool. So I get the mobile router confused with the other one that's similar, but this is like you're going to a convention center and you want to connect back to your network, or is this the one that relies on cell data? I can't remember.
Yes, the UMR is the portable 4G LTE routers.
Right. So it could be in an RV or something.
Yeah,
I guess.
Yeah, it could be anyway. Yeah.
Right.
I think the Protect idea is more about if you've got a remote camera, somewhere and you want it to connect back to your network, you can use that VPN to do it, which is quite cool. So some nice little options in there.
Ooh.
And there's a few more little bits and pieces as well. I noticed the community. So community.ui.com, the forums basically got a little bit of a redesign. The right-hand side column with all the categories got redesigned, and each release post, if it's EA, they've deleted all the share buttons for the EA ones. And then if you go to a GA one, they're now got the share icons. And yeah, that's about it. I noticed that too. It's a nice, like, kind of minor little. It seems like they're just going through everything and kind of cleaning up and updating the design in a few places. I like that they have a separate cloud gateways category, because it got tied into network on some filters. Like I feel like they could still improve that a bit, just because like when you go to look for a specific software version for a specific product, it's like still kind of hard to dig through, but definitely better than before. I still find the search process a little bit tricky, a little bit messy, but yeah, that's pretty good. And Cody mentioned this a few weeks ago on Twitter, I think. It's not anything like special, but it's just a first-party door closer for UniFi access. Not that it's meant for UniFi access, but it's just a hinge. So
they're definitely insulted that you said it wasn't special. Everything Ubiquiti makes is special. Come on.
Okay. This is awesome. It's got Ubiquiti logo on it, so
it's a revolutionary door closer.
Yeah, if you look on the bit that actually touches the door, so you'll never see it again. It's got a Ubiquiti logo inside there, so you can install those if you want to.
But yeah, I mean, for people that do access, I'm sure all of the accessories that we don't probably ever touch on, like the locks and the closers and buttons, like all of that, you kind of need to have a real access solution. So this is nice.
They seem expensive. This one's $130, but it has got adjustable power. I guess how quickly the door closes. I just googled door closer and about $50 or something. So I'm sure there's a reason why it's expensive. But yeah, there we go.
Because it looks nice. Yeah, come on.
Yeah. So that's pretty much it for this episode. Before we disappear, what have we been working on since last time we recorded?
I did update my UniFi Protect comparison charts. I've started the slog of updating my network comparison charts just because they're pretty out of date now. And every time I go to do that, new hardware releases. So I still want to at least have like a current version posted, hopefully in May. But beyond that, I just want to get back to words. I'm tired of comparison charts. How about you?
I filmed and uploaded a AI port review. The AI port has been sat on my desk for a couple months, so I got around to recording a video for that. Really cool, actually. So what I did is I set up a test rig outside with a nanostation, like a dedicated Protect setup for it, and tested face detection, license plate detection, because it can add all those features to a G3 bullet. So I put it up against a G5 Flex, that's all I had, and tested it. It makes a massive difference on the speed it detects stuff, even on the G5 Flex. So and the confidence level increases a little bit. So yeah, and I've been running it since then in production on my network. It's pretty good, to be fair. There's limitations where it can see faces at what distance on certain cameras, but yeah, works pretty well.
Yeah, the AI port and the AI key, those are both, I think, the most interesting hardware they've done for Protect. I mean, obviously new cameras are interesting too, but like just when I was doing my updates for my comparison chart, I was trying to like make sense of which features are on which cameras.
Yeah.
And then there is a support article about kind of, if you're talking about face detection and you have this camera, and if you add an AI port, it's real time, and if you add an AI key, it's not real time. Like, the overlap and confusion is kind of overwhelming, but the AI port is a very cool device, and the key is too. But essentially, so much to learn with all that stuff. Yeah,
essentially, the AI cameras can do everything in real time.
Yeah, face,
license, animal, person, vehicle, whatever, and the AI port gives that capability to older cameras.
Right.
Essentially, it's all real time stuff. So if it detects a face wrong, you can't then go and correct it. With the AI key, it's not real time. It's all in the past stuff. Right. I hadn't actually watched them, but I watched Clay's videos on both of those devices. They are incredibly well filmed. So yeah, if Clay's watching, they're just so professionally shot, so well explained, and just you come out of that video, you know exactly what these devices do. So shout out to Clay for those videos; they're really good.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I watched his video, and that because I was like pulling my hair out trying to understand it, and then that's the video I watched. So highly recommend that, and check out your AI port review.
Yeah, that's pretty much it for this month on the UI Chat podcast. And yeah, we'll see you again next time.
See ya.